There was recently a debate between a Christian person defending patriarchy values and a woman defending feminism. The goal of this video is not to pick a side, but to illustrate how any message or idea is only as good in the end as the communication tactics you use to present it to your listeners.
Patriarchy, I mean, do you view that women are oppressed?
I think absolutely globally. I don't know how much I feel that applies in the United States today, but globally, absolutely.
And Andrew, do you think that women are oppressed in the United States?
Well, it depends on what we would consider oppression to be.
Right. Well, let's start there. How do you define oppression?
I would say probably the unjust wielding of power by one group over another to prevent them from acting in their free will.
I'm sorry I have to do this, but I do have to get a little bit into your presupposition there. What is justice?
I mean, that's a philosophical debate.
Well, but you're appealing to it.
Yeah, I would say that justice is at its very core definition, probably just closer to the definition of equality, like equal treatment.
So anything which is unequal is oppression.
First of all, big shout out to the fact that they actually let each other speak, which seems to have become an almost supernatural thing these days in debates. And I will use the Sleight of Mouth model developed by Robert Dills to explain what is happening here without any bias. I do respect some values into Christianity without being a Christian myself, and I do respect some of the values portrayed by feminism without calling myself a feminist either. The good news about this then is that I will study this from a neutral, as much as possible, standpoint. In the beginning, he is asking her to clarify her worldview. Right here, the inference she's making is men do hold unjust power that prevent the free will of women, therefore women are oppressed. That is her belief right here. When he's asking her to clarify what is justice specifically, that is a very smart move, and that is kind of tricky from a manipulative standpoint. That is a smart move because when you want to communicate, debate with somebody, you want to make sure your definition is the same as the definition you have. Otherwise, with that alone, there will be a clash later. So it is a smart move. However, asking specifically for justice is naturally leading into his frame where he knows he will be able to debate very easily according to his own terms. She's trying to kind of evade slightly by saying it is a philosophical debate, kind of distancing herself from the question, to which he replies, well, you are appealing to that philosophical debate anyway by your claim, so let's just clarify what you mean. And when she says, okay, for me, or at least for the worldview I support, justice means equal treatment. And that is the tricky point where you just rehearse something without having the foundations, the philosophical background or social background or a political background or just a psychological background or religious background for what you claim. That is difficult to argue against somebody who actually did the research and investigated why does he believe in this. Therefore, he can just get her stuck pretty easily by chunking up, saying, so anything that is unequal is oppression. And obviously not, but since she probably did not investigate that much, why does she believe into this? Or at least she may never had so far to argue in a real life conversation. Therefore, it may be tricky against somebody who did the research.
Depends on what you mean by unequal, I guess. Like if two people
well, you believe that egalitarianism
perform unequally on a test, no, I don't think that would be oppression.
So then, okay, what is justice?
Honestly, I don't think I have a good definition for justice in the I'm curious what your definition of justice is.
Well, for me, I would make an appeal to Christian ethics in order to make a determination of what is or is not just. But in your case, right, you don't have anything that you can appeal to, do you? You just appeal to what? Nothing?
No, but I mean, don't you think that's kind of a cop-out that you can say, oh, well, God told me what justice is, it's Christian ethics, but you can't...
How could you ever say that my justification is not good enough for you who has no justification.
That is fair if you're talking about me directly.
Since he pointed out the lack of evidence for what she claims, then good move on her side, she is asking him for his definition of justice according to Christianity or any other value system, at least asking him what is his definition then. And where you see him initially letting out a small burst of laugh, I guess it is because he anticipated what she was going to say when he will be referring to Christianity. Obviously, her being apparently a non-God believer, she was obviously going to try to give a counter example of, yes, but it is only your perception because it is God. What if I don't believe in this? And he's right away, therefore, pointing out to a consequence pattern of, I am going to mention Christian ethics, and I know you will disprove, but in your case, you don't have anything else you can appeal to as a moral standard or moral value that is equal or above Christianity itself. Then she's trying to go higher on the meta frame of, calling out religious beliefs themselves, of don't you think it's too easy to cop out by only appealing to God? I would say calling out the meta frame like this is a bit brutal and is kind of too early at this phase of a debate where all the cards haven't been laid out yet. Personally, if possible, I would have stayed on clarifying, chunking down more of the terms rather than trying to go right away outframing the person. She doesn't know, in my opinion, enough at this point about his perception to outframe him like this right off the bat. Which is why he can very easily reframe this by saying, how can my justification be not good enough for you when you have no justification yourself? So he's pulling back the argument she used back at her, which is normal because she didn't really investigate his religious beliefs yet before calling out for such a thing as, why do you believe in God?
For all of it will reduce to essentially relativism from your end. Absent any type of religion, it's going to be relativism. There is no moral standard you're going to be able to appeal to.
I think that's true.
Okay, go ahead and try to appeal to a standard that's not relativism.
Like a moral standard, I think minimizing harm.
That's relative. What's harm?
Well, I would take more thought. But I mean, what is the Christian moral standard?
Well, the Christian moral standard is divine command, and this is based on the understanding that knowledge itself cannot exist absent God. It's an X to Y argument. So in any case, regardless of what I would appeal to, even if I said I appeal to a flying spaghetti monster in the sky, I really don't have to justify that. If there's no justification on your end for what is a moral standard, I don't have to justify mine then either. Why would I need to? If we're both just in relativism, then anything that I assert as being correct is just as valid as anything you assert as being correct.
So then he's expressing his model of the world about what the Christian values are, which is personal to him and any person believing into joining Christianity. Then she's finding out for herself something she does believe in too, that being ethical would mean, should mean at least minimizing harm. And again, instead of trying to outframe her by saying, no, it is not this, or this is not just, appealing to moral values, he's chunking down again. Smarter move than trying to outframe like she did on, oh, why do you believe in God? He said, okay, let's say this is about minimizing harm. Then how do you define harm specifically? Right there, I would say she's getting a bit stuck and relying upon applying to self. So what is the Christian moral standard instead of answering or replying? I would say that is kind of an evasive move right here, because that is kind of the second or third time she's evading the question and trying to push back at him with, yeah, and what about you? To simplify, he's pointing out to this lack of evidence by, I don't need to justify. As a consequence, I don't need to justify. If you don't need to justify it yourself, why should I if you don't have to?
Okay, but I mean, so would you agree that what I'm asserting, anything I can assert can be just as correct as what you're asserting?
If it's absent a justification, there just wouldn't be a reason for me to justify. So then what I would need to do then is appeal to force. And so if I were to make an appeal to force, we've already established that we have the monopoly on force, and you can't make a moral argument because you're a relativist, where are we left?
I mean, so do you discount any secular...
Hang on. Answer my question.
Sorry, ask the question again.
Where are you left if you're a relativist? You can only appeal to relativism. My worldview has to be just as valid as yours. So then, therefore, we both appeal to physical force. What else could we ever appeal to?
Honestly, I am not totally sure how we get from there to appealing to physical force.
Because what else could you appeal to other than just an enforcement to your preferences?
Appeal to for what? For like a justification
for any ought. Every ought would just become force. You would just say the things I want to see different in the world are because I want to see them different in the world. And then that would require force. So relativism will reduce to a force doctrine.
But I'm curious why Christian ethics wouldn't also reduce to a force doctrine.
She's calling out, though, good thing on her side, calling out his inference, which in the end is his belief of relativism can only be approved through force. That may be verified, but so far he did not clarify, so asking him to clarify how do you know that, or at least I'm not sure it is the case, that is a good point on her side, I think. And where he is validating his belief is by applying the consequence pattern again, by saying if the only reason a change should happen is because you have decided it, which is kind of what she's implying so far, then your relativism is reduced to a force doctrine. So she's going back to apply to self by, so what about Christianity then? I would say this is kind of a bullet in the foot right here, because she has already been going there multiple times and he was able to reply all the time. So forcing on something that didn't work the first 2 times, I would say that this is a really bad move here.
Well, the Christian ethic can make a determination between an is and an ought. So we would make the ought claim that you should not utilize force for what we would consider oppression, which is hardly patriarchy. That's not oppressive. But yeah, we would make a justified moral claim. And that's how we would move forward in a moral conversation or in a not. But from your case, it's total and complete relativism. And you know it's relativism. Whatever worldview you come up with, absent religion, is going to reduce to relativism. And so we're just going to be right back to force again.
So clarifying once again on his side his perception of the world and what are the supporting claims he has to support the belief system he's operating from.
I mean, what if God isn't real?
Then
do you think that has any effect on...
same justification you do to appeal to force.
So could I not make up my own thing that tells me what is right and wrong, and I can lead back to that? It won't be relativism because I have this thing. That would be relativism,
yeah.
I'm curious how that's different from saying that it comes from God.
Because there's philosophical proofs for God. If there's no philosophical proofs that you could present for whatever your flying spaghetti monster is, then we would reject it.
I don't know if we want to get... I'm actually curious what the philosophical proofs that God exists would be.
Well,
or you mean philosophical proof that...
Before we get into...
that might be a little off.
Before we would get into a philosophical proof, though, just remember, I don't have to justify one, because you don't have to justify one. So there's no... In other words, coming to me and asking me, can you make a justification for a thing which I can't justify? Why would I need to do that?
Never ever say that to a Christian. That is the worst or last possible thing you would say during a debate to a Christian person. Attacking religious beliefs is like a no-go, because the person will just fight tooth and nails to prove you wrong if you do that. Luckily, he has enough emotional self-control, at least here, to not overreact, but many Christian people would have been overreacting here, or at least lose patience with her if she was calling out such a thing. And I'm saying that not being a Christian myself, but I just know where not to go with somebody. There are some things that are just a no-go, and the more you respect somebody's deeper worldview, the more you will be able to make them accept some parts of your worldview too. Attacking them like this, it is a really bad move in my opinion. So he is doing what she has been doing so far, applying to self, then yes, we are the same, and explaining I don't need to bring a justification if you don't have to bring any. You're asking me to provide clarification for something you haven't clarified yourself. First of all, why should I?
We would just assume immediately that you disbelieve whatever my justification would be, right? Because you don't hold it, right? So you don't believe it. So if that's the case, we're still going to be reduced to just appealing to force again.
Okay, well then that puts us on equal footing with our
If
ethics.
it puts us on equal footing with our ethics, and both of us are appealing to force, then ultimately, if men decide to utilize force in order, and they have the monopoly on force, you can't make a single moral argument for why that would be wrong.
So you disagree that patriarchy is oppression?
Yeah, okay, but hang on, before we move the goalpost.
No, that was a question.
No, and I'll
sorry.
answer the question, but I asked you one first. And the question I asked was, if it is true that we've reduced it all to relativism, if it is true that all we can do now is appeal to force, and if it is true that men have the monopoly on force, then if men used their force monopoly to oppress women, you couldn't make a single moral argument against that, could you?
I think that you could.
Then do so.
I did not come prepared with a moral argument, honestly, but I think that there are philosophers and people who are
Okay,
experienced at debating
but you
who could.
couldn't.
I couldn't, no.
Okay.
About his belief that men should be on top because they can use more physical force, I don't personally share that belief myself. But again, it is not about picking a side. Here it is simply about studying not who is right and who is wrong, but who has the best communication tactics. And so far he has been leading the whole thing, and coming down to asking her, can you provide a clear physical proof that would outgrow or at least put aside Christianity, when she cannot provide any and says philosophers did the research, then maybe they did, but in that case, do mention if you didn't do any research on your side. Obviously, any person listening to that debate around will be more inclined toward believing that person, unless they have some emotional wounds about this topic and they may overreact, but overreacting emotionally will not make the debate move any forward either. So from all the things we have seen here, he was definitely leading most of the debate. I think it was a longer sequence on the channel. I will link the original video down below in the description. I don't know how the debate ended, but so far he was definitely leading for most of it. However, I want to keep pointing that out. It is not about who is right, who is wrong, what is truth, what is false. Everything can be seen as true, everything can be seen as false and wrong. It's just about how do you present the information. And to that extent, you can find a complete method down below to learn Sleight of Mouth and discover how whatever you want to say, you can hold a strong stance in a conversation, whether in a debate or in a situation where you want to help somebody getting their mind unlocked. You can just use some wordplay that will always make them reflect differently on what they used to believe and on what they think they can accomplish. That is a simple method with Sleight of Mouth you can start using as of today. It is down below if you want it, and thank you for listening. I will link all the things in the description. See you in the next video.